carried it out in a clandestine enough way to have evaded the miserable headmistress's notice. She'd attended to her lessons with a diligence and solemnity, laughing about the absurdity of it all, only under the covers with the other girls, who'd hated that place as much as Myrtle had. She'd dropped more flawless curtsies than she could count, had perfected her stitches and singing. Well, perhaps not her singing. Mrs. Belden had cringed and banged her cane, accusing Myrtle of having the tones of a drowning cat trying to scratch her way out of a metal tub. And even as Myrtle had strenuously disagreed with that harsh assessment, she'd not challenged the miserable old biddy, but instead had focused on playing the pianoforte, at the appropriate tempo and volume. She'd learned to perform steps of the quadrille La Boulangère, and even the scandalous waltz, as best she was able to without a male partner leading. Along with the rules of propriety and decorum, she'd been schooled on needlework and the practical study of household management. She'd learned and practiced her discourse with other students and instructors in both English and French, always speaking on topics suitable for polite discussion when she made her come out this spring. Through it all, Myrtle had conducted herself with grace and aplomb. But this day and this moment were pushing Myrtle in every way, as through the roar of the household activity she threatened to erupt, undoing everything she'd done to get out of Mrs. Belden's. From her central vantage point she searched the bustling crowd of servants below. A young maid approached, and to make herself heard over the din, Myrtle called out to her loudly, "Do you know where my mother is?" "No, miss," the unfamiliar young woman responded, and then, dropping a curtsy, she hastened around Myrtle. Myrtle followed the maid's descent to the marble foyer, where Haynes, the family butler, stood in wait, directing the maid amidst the commotion. Another servant rushed past, this time a footman. Myrtle stretched out a hand, almost wishing to catch him like a spotted trout in her family's ponds, and hold on so he'd have no choice but to look at her and answer. "Excuse me, I'm looking for my mother." Her mother, who ruled the roost in this household, and according to Myrtle's doting father, the world. "Can you point me toward her?" He dropped his stare to the ground. "I cannot say, my lady." A ruddy flush stained his cheeks, and he stepped quickly around her and fled. Myrtle rocked back on her heels. He could not say. He could not, nor could any of the previous 6 young men and women to whom she'd posed her questions. And though she prided herself on being quite clever and intelligent, it wouldn't take much deduction from a person with even half her wit to gather that the staff had been instructed to avoid her. Nay, more specifically, they'd been advised to hide their mistress. Myrtle headed downstairs and attempted to wheedle an answer from 4 more servants before she caught sight of someone who could help, no matter how inadvertently that may be. "Aunt Leslie," she called loudly, for her tiny, heavily rounded, bespectacled aunt and godmother was headed out one door and over to the adjacent chambers. Her eldest daughter was invariably assigned every holiday house party. Bypassing a pair of servants with a trunk between them, with Myrtle's trunk between them, Myrtle rushed to intercept her aunt. "Aunt Leslie, have you seen my mother?" she asked without preamble when she reached the frizzy-haired woman. "She is in your chambers packing," her aunt said, and then let herself inside. "There you are," she said to whichever one of her kin she'd been looking for. "I told you we must—" Aunt Leslie's words faded as she shut the door behind her. Knocked back on her heels once more, Myrtle stared at the panel. "Packing?" she repeated aloud. Her mother? Her mother, who delighted in having servants and wouldn't be able to pick out a trunk from a valise, suddenly found herself actively engaged in packing those very items, and in Myrtle's rooms, no less. Though in fairness it was also the last place Myrtle would think to look for her. Sure enough, when she reached her rooms, Myrtle found her. Them. "Mr. Phippen is set to begin immediately," her mother was saying to her husband as she sorted through an array of jewellery set out on Myrtle's vanity, then instructed her husband to place the properly wrapped item in the valise. Ah, they were hiding together. Then again, Myrtle's mother had never much been one for being alone. Myrtle had often suspected it was one of the reasons her parents had wished for, and had, their brood of 6 children. "The servants have already begun draping the sheets," her father said, "but for the chambers that will be in use this evening." She'd hand it to them. They didn't manage to look even a tad bit guilty. In fact, they didn't so much as pause in their work and acknowledge her. Nay, they were far more engrossed in talks of whoever this